There's a new poll out from Pew Research, and I think it's really, really disturbing because it makes me think people missed civics class and never learned about the Constitution and haven't thought about basic rights and values. So they asked if the government should take steps to restrict false information online, and basically half the country said yes, the government should restrict false information. So to give you the exact numbers, 48% of Americans say, quote, the government should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of information. Even the way they phrased that, it was almost like biased in favor of freedom of speech, and still 48% said restrict it. And it was 50% who opposed it. So to be fair, freedom of speech and freedom of information is +2, but still, I don't think that's anywhere near enough. That's amazing. And we'll get to why I think this is in a little bit. Now, just to put that in perspective, though, in 2018, the number was 39%. So 39% of Americans said the government should take steps to restrict false information online, and 58% opposed restrictions. So it was much less. It basically went up 10 points over the course of a few years. So now why is that? I mean, my guess is, and your guess is as good as mine, but my guess is probably COVID is one reason. People feel like the COVID misinformation is so damaging and so dangerous and has so many negative consequences that they feel like, well, we have no choice. We have to restrict stuff that's false. That's one theory. And then the other theory is QAnon stuff. The whole stop the steal and storming the Capitol on January 6th. I think that really, and understandably so, shook people to their core about how fragile democracy is. And they felt like, well, some action's got to be taken, and this was like the most direct route that people thought would make sense. Now, this is beyond depressing, to be honest with you. So there's a massive partisan divide on this question. Massive partisan divide. 65% of Democrats and people who lean Democratic say that the government should restrict freedom of information. 65%. That is a colossal majority of Democrats and people who lean Democratic. So, I think that includes left independents, which is what I would classify myself as. 65%. That's amazing. Now for Republicans and lean Republican, so Republicans and Republican-leaning conservatives, Republican-leaning independents is what I meant to say, so general conservatives, only 28% say the government should restrict freedom of information. So you got to keep it real. On this fundamental question, there are more Republicans who are correct than Democrats, and more right-leaning people who are correct than left-leaning people. There's another thing here. It says tech companies should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of information. So they also asked not just about the government restricting information, they asked about tech companies, and you had 76% of people who are Democrats or lean Democratic said yes, tech companies should restrict freedom of information. And 37% of Republicans said tech companies should restrict freedom of information. So, guys, this is astonishing to me. And I do think, to a large extent, people have been propagandized into this position. They've been told over and over and over and over that, QAnon is dangerous and conspiracy theories are dangerous, and look at the real-world consequences when this stuff gets pumped out there into the body politic and when it's available for anybody to get the information. Look at what happens with the COVID misinformation and the anti-vaccine stuff, and people are dying because they're listening to it. And don't get me wrong, I think misinformation is a colossal problem. I just think you have to also hold on to your principles and your values and effectively the Constitution while you combat it. So the whole job of the media should be to give people news and information and to educate them and to fact check the insane conspiracy theories. But part of the problem is mainstream media has blown all of their credibility. So nobody is believed, or very few people are believed, when they check the incorrect conspiracy theories and when they check the COVID misinformation. So, I mean, this is a disastrous poll. And I mean, just stop and think about it, guys. If the government were to get involved and like restrict information, what would they have done in the lead up to the Iraq war? I'll tell you, they would have banned everybody who was saying Saddam doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam is not a threat to us, and Saddam didn't work with Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, and the war is based on lies. So everybody who was correct would have been banned, because the official government position was the incorrect position. So you just can't. You can't police this stuff. It's not possible. There is no Ministry of Truth. Who's going to fact check the fact checkers? Who's going to watch the watchmen? You guys have heard me say this 1,000 times over, but I'm honestly astonished that the numbers are this bad on this question and that it's even worse in left-leaning circles. So listen, I know sometimes I sound like a broken record, but that's on purpose. I need to be a broken record on this stuff because it's just that important. So get out there and tell everybody you know, don't buy this. It's absolute nonsense. Stand by freedom of speech. Stand by the principle of it. I think the government shouldn't get involved in restricting the free flow of information, but also the tech companies shouldn't really do it either. I get it. If there's a direct threat of violence or if somebody's doxxed, that's a different scenario. You should have an open, transparent process and then correct action should be taken. But as much as possible, you have to lean on the side of free speech. Because if you get rid of that, there's nothing left. We live in a complete, authoritarian hellscape if you go down that path. And unfortunately, we are going down that path.